It doesn't matter if they've been there a day or a year. You got to invest the same amount of money in them to keep them safe.
Welcome to the Canary Report, the podcast where risk leaders, safety professionals, and operational executives come for real-world stories and smarter strategies to keep people safe. I'm your host, Michael Zell. In each episode, I sit down with exceptional leaders who are transforming how risk and safety are managed. Whether you're a leader of a nationwide EH&S program in a high-risk industry, or you champion workplace safety across 200 retail locations, this podcast is for you. Let's get into it. Welcome to Canary in a Coal Mine. I'm Michael Zell, and I am the host and founder of Yellowbird. I am doing a very first in-person live podcast interview with no other than I'm doing a first ever podcast live at Jake's Cigar Bar in Lexington, Kentucky. We have just finished having a great time this morning going over different business and other opportunities, and we are here with Colby Davis, who is the Director of Safety for ECC. And Colby, I want to thank you for inviting me out to Lexington, and I would like you to give us a little bit of your background on how you got to be in the position that you're in, which is heading up and first, tell us a little bit about what ECC is.
So Ervin Cable is a telecommunications construction firm. We also have an engineering leg to it, project management side of it. You know, we specialize right now in fiber, either underground or aerial, all across America.
Wow. So that's fantastic. And so the company is based here in Lexington, and
we're based in Sturgis, Kentucky.
Oh, really? In Sturgis?
Yes, sir.
Wonderful. And so you are based just how far outside of Lexington are you? You got to drive in.
It's about 3 hours.
Okay.
So that's not bad. We had an office here for years.
Yes.
And I think we finished that project a year or so ago, and
sure,
got out of our lease and moved on to the next project.
Fantastic. Well, so tell me a little bit. Our listeners and our watchers always kind of say, well, what makes this individual a person that you wanted to speak with, and you are an extremely humble person. So let me first say that most of our day was spent with yourself and another partner of ours, both of which are veterans and have served our country. And I've heard some wonderful and great and interesting stories. And so first, thank you for that, for your service. And along those lines, tell us more about your journey of how you ended up in safety, and also along with your family.
So graduating high school, safety wasn't on the bingo card.
No, it was not.
I skipped that station at career day if it was there. Come from a line of engineers. My dad was an engineer. My grandfather's the engineer, and so engineering was the choice. But mechanical didn't interest me. Joined the Army basically out of high school, and while I was in basic training, my dad sent me the curriculum for environmental and civil engineering at Murray State University.
Okay.
And if anybody knows, safety and Murray State usually go hand in hand.
Yes, they do.
And so in school, I was upstairs primarily, and then about midway through, they offered this emphasis program where I could pick up a safety emphasis on the back of my engineering stuff. And I talked to a few people, and they're like, "Hey, man, it doesn't hurt. Like, safety's a big thing coming. This was in 2009.
Sure.
So I mean, it was a growing business at that time.
Absolutely.
And it was, Murray would post a career fair. I mean, small companies couldn't even get a seat at the door. It was GE and Marathon, and
yes,
just coming to get everybody out of the program. So graduated with the engineering degree, did the safety emphasis, and then I got into a talent and development program with Owens Corning.
Okay, sure.
So the Pink Panther, they moved me to Florida. Being from the military, I accomplished the required terminal objectives sooner,
yes,
than they had anticipated.
Yes.
And that was because I wanted to get closer to home.
Sure.
And I was dating a girl, now my wife, and just kept waiting, and we were in love, and we were ready to get married.
Sure.
And I get a phone call from my brother. He worked at the US EPA, and said, "Hey, I gave your resume to this guy. He may call you." So I left Owens Corning, and I went to work for a company called VMV Paducah Built. They were a manufacturer of custom locomotives and a repair shop.
Okay.
And, they did the engines, did the wheels, did everything on a choo-choo train, basically.
Okay.
And when I got there, we had 450, 500 employees.
Sure.
We were running 300 welding machines a day,
Okay.
and super heavy transportation.
Yes.
Production facility. And they had really struggled on safety prior to my arrival. And so we get in there and I'm taking that military holistic approach to, how do we make this better?
Sure.
I tell everybody this. I learned more about safety from a 75-year-old Union steward than I did in college.
Yes.
He took a special liking to me. He taught me how to deliver a message.
Yes.
To, all levels, whether you're talking to the president or you're talking to the guy that hired in on Tuesday.
Sure.
He taught me how to communicate that and get them to buy in. And with me and him working together, when we got the buy-in, it took, 3, 4, 5, 6 months. And then the numbers started dropping and they started getting really good. And then we applied for the Governor Safety Award and we won it.
So along those lines, so numbers started dropping, you started improving. Was there anything that you did in that process besides the messaging, which is a vitally important piece? Was there anything that you remember that was like, wow, that was a game changer?
Focusing on training.
Okay.
And it wasn't, I didn't really coin the phrase until later in my safety, and management career. But I always reference what I call the 3 E's. That's the responsibility of a manager or a director. You have the responsibility to educate your employees. What does right look like? What does wrong look like? What do you do if you see that or encounter that? Yes. What training is required to execute that task, or how do I identify that hazard? How do I document it?
Sure.
That all goes with that education piece.
Right.
So educate them, empower them.
Yep.
I think a lot of gaps that I've seen, as a consultant and Owens Corning and just, going to various conferences is we do a really good job of training people in some format or another.
Right.
But they don't leave empowered
Yes.
to actually take that training
Yes.
to the job site and perform effectively and safely.
Yes.
And the last one's enforcing it. Sure. And the older and more mature I get, the more I realize that enforcement works better if you're more positive than negative.
Yes.
The old stick and the carrot.
Yep.
And in Ervin, one thing we've done really well over the last 3 years is we put our carrots out there.
Yes.
Hey, if you knew this, then here's a carrot,
Yes.
Really just kind of coming off that. So going back out railroad, left there, times were getting tough.
Sure.
Had a baby on the way.
Yeah.
And
was this your first?
that was my first.
Okay.
In 2016 I left.
Okay. Yep.
And I went to work for a consulting firm. So I got a lot of broad spectrum. I mean, I was in chicken plants, I was in aluminum plants,
Oh yeah.
nuke plants.
Oh yes.
And I did that. And then I took a 12-month break from there to deploy.
Okay. Yeah.
And
Yep.
while I was deployed, one of my clients, when I was consulting, reached out to me and said, "Hey, when you get back?" And I said, somewhere around October.
Sure.
Said, "Hey, when you get back, we're going to hire you." I'm like, okay, I've heard this before, or did take it serious. Yes. If I get back, my wife, posts on social media that I'm back and everything. And they gave us a couple days, They called me at like 7:15 one morning. Me and my wife, they went to an Airbnb just, to spend some quality time together. We hadn't seen each other in 11 months.
Yes.
And woke up to a phone call and was like, "Hey,
You're back.
when are you going to come see us?" Well, it just so happened where we were staying, and for us to get home, we had to drive right past their office. And I was like, "Well,
I'm already here.
I could stop by this morning." And I went in and I talked to them, and they made me an offer, and, everything looked good. It sounded good.
Yep.
We talked about it, thought about it, prayed about it, and went to work there 2 weeks later.
Wow. Now, was that this firm or was that a Okay.
Well, that was a company called Western Rivers Boat Management.
Okay.
So the railroad was family owned. Western Rivers was family owned.
Yes.
The consultant was national. They were large.
Yes.
They were very huge.
How did you feel about the consulting journey? Did you, as far as exposure is great, but how did you feel about just kind of the lifestyle and journey part of that?
The knowledge that I gained was, you can't measure it.
Sure.
what I didn't like is I always felt like I was identifying problems
Yeah.
and telling them how to do it, but I wasn't part of implementing the solution.
Yes.
So it didn't work for me.
We talk about that at Yellowbird, that you can't outsource safety. You have to be able to have people come in and assist you, but you need somebody who takes these things, sets the company for success, and then drives these programs ahead. I have more consulting friends and people in the industry that have an empty feeling because they know a lot. They give good guidance. They give a report, and it sits on the desk of the person who got it. And you've spent 10, 20, 50, $100,000 on this extensive report, and it's not actioned.
Yeah.
And it's one of the challenges I have with this industry is that there's a lot of consultants that unfortunately do great work, but they don't get to participate in the execution.
Yeah.
And that's part of our thesis.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And because it can be soul sucking, because you've done so much hard work to make sure that they are ready to implement this plan, and then we get busy, we go back to our old ways, and then that plan sits on the desk and eventually goes in a drawer.
Yes, I lived it as a consultant.
Yeah,
and then you look forward and you go, look on OSHA, or you go back for another meeting and you look on the OSHA 300 board and you see all these things that happened after you did your part that they didn't implement.
Yeah,
it just breaks your heart.
And you saw it. You saw the freight train coming. You're like, okay, you really need to get this hazardous materials plan in place, or you have a lot of near misses in your forklift program, or you need to get better forklift training in place,
or you don't even have an near miss program.
Yes, exactly. And so then, so you're at this firm, and they've hired you after you.
Spent almost probably 5.5 years. At Western Rivers, I was hired in as a director. I made VP there.
Wonderful.
So that was a wonderful opportunity. And then just randomly, I was actually posting a job on LinkedIn for Western Rivers.
Yep.
And I saw, because it popped up.
Sure.
And I hadn't used LinkedIn because I was happy with my job and all that stuff. I hadn't used LinkedIn.
Right.
Looking. And first job up there was this director of safety job at Ervin Cable.
Sure.
Well, I never thought I was going to get a director job 20 minutes from my house. I live in Marion, Kentucky.
Right.
There's nothing there.
Sure.
Closest thing to us is the coal mines.
Yep.
Which are an hour away.
Sure.
But the Ervin just happened to be 20, 25 minutes away from the house. So I was like, man, I'm going to throw my name in the mix.
Yeah, why not?
And I think I submitted it at like 2:00. And the director of HR called me by 5.
Same day. That's awesome.
And I didn't know it at the time, but they had been interviewing and looking at people for 60, 90, 100 days.
Right.
And they just couldn't, in their words, they couldn't find the right fit.
Yes. Well, they're also in the same predicament that you were in, which is it's not exactly the biggest pond to find somebody who's local enough to be.
And they were very specific that you would relocate to here.
Yes.
Because I look at anybody in a safety role. You should be nested with your operations.
Sure, of course.
And lack of better words, if you're a regional or you're divisional or you're a director and you report directly to the president, you're the senior advisor to your ops leader.
Absolutely.
On all things.
Absolutely.
You've got to be, sometimes you got to be the clutch. Sometimes you got to be the e-brake. Sometimes you got to be the parking brake.
Right.
We can't do this, or we can do this, but we got to do it this way.
Right. So you found this position on LinkedIn randomly, you threw your hat in. So where are you with your family and your life at that point? So you had
two kids. I was traveling a lot.
Yeah.
My wife is a saint.
Yes.
She was working full time. I was home very little.
Yes.
And then, just trying to be dad and husband and provider, and I'm still in the National Guard at that time.
Right.
Right. Nothing's worse than a week-long business trip, and you get home on Friday, and you drop a rolling suitcase off to pack a green duffel bag and go away for a weekend.
Wow.
So, and that's all my family's ever known.
Sure, of course, but it's still I don't know if she's a saint, but she certainly had stepped up to cover a lot. And anybody who knows an entrepreneur or knows somebody who is on the road, those are both very, very high intensity things. And if you don't have support at home, it's a really difficult time. That I have a client of Yellowbird's that said that their average person internally is traveling. And I think you may have this with some of your training folks, Casey and others, that are traveling so often to make sure that they're present and integrating with the program. And you look at these 1,000,000-mile people and you're like, well, wow, that it has its cost. And, but it also has its benefit and it has its yield. You told me, so tell me a little bit about the statistics without getting into I don't ever want to, there's no need to go down the rabbit hole of negativity or legality, but just the improvements that you've seen. You gave me a couple of stats earlier today that I thought were frankly jaw-dropping.
Yeah. So Ervin was a really good company and they really took care of their people. And most people never left.
Sure.
And they had a lot of institutional knowledge. But like a lot of companies, when they grew quickly,
right,
they brought in, what we call green hard hats.
Sure.
And the injuries came with it.
Yeah.
And, they had a director, they had a program, they had a very robust training program. One of the few fiber companies that has their own, pole school for learn how to climb and the all fiber and everything. But they were missing a few small things that added up to a very large thing.
Right.
So we started in November, and the goal was a 30% reduction. And we exceeded that by, I don't know, about 90%.
Sure.
We went from, and we were meeting the industry average for EMR or IRA.
Right.
But
and nobody strives for an industry average.
So, if you look at IR rates, I think our industry average is somewhere. I've seen 1.81. I've seen 2.8 something.
Sure.
So somewhere between there, is probably accurate.
Yep.
And those numbers.
And for those who aren't familiar, can you explain, just for the podcast purposes, what the range is and kind of what it means?
So IR is your incident rate, so you can compare your incident rate with the Bureau of Labor Statistic data off the survey per your industry. It's, locomotives or marine manufacturing or telecom construction or power line.
And they do sub-industries as well, which is great. So that you can actually go down to the nuances.
So, that was kind of the goalpost.
Yeah, sure.
Under that, it's good. If we can kick a field goal through the upright, right above that benchmark, we're good. So my first full year, we dropped to a low 1.
Okay.
Which we're sitting the industry average. My second full year, we dropped to a 0.6.
Yes. So you're above the industry average.
Oh no, we're lower.
Okay.
So it's
no, above as in better than.
Yeah, better than
the industry.
Yeah, we're smacking it there.
Yes.
And
so 1.0, like in a mod rate for insurance, is the industry average. That's kind of if they're using all of the statistics, 1.0 is right in the middle of where the industry is, good and bad. Anything below that number is a positive in that
100%.
So yes,
just 100%.
Yeah.
So we got under 1, got to a 0.6.
Right.
Talking to the president, talking to the family, and they're like, what's left? I'm like, oh, we got a lot of runway left.
Sure.
We're going to get better. We're 8 months in, and we're sitting at a 0.1, actually less than a 1.
Wow.
And it's rounding up to a 0.1 at this point.
That's fantastic.
With 1,700 people.
That is absolutely amazing.
Well, it's not me. It's the guys. It's the employees.
It's everyone. It's everybody. And it includes you. And it includes you who is focused on the right things and has a program together. You had made a statement earlier regarding that, you're one of the top people in the industry from these various areas of number of people to number of incidents. You haven't had an incident in a very long time. I have a very challenging view on the race to zero because nobody wants to ruin a streak. And so the theory of 0 incidents or 1 incident or a low number on incidents is difficult for me because I love the number because of what it represents. But it also means that it's unrealistic. Things haven't occurred, whether they're major or not major, that we as a community, and this is where I have challenges. How do you look at the carrot and the stick that we talked about, and making sure that people don't feel, oh, I know I cut the tip of my finger off, but I'm going to just put some glue to throw some dirt on it and go back to work because I don't want to be the incident, the recordable streak breaker.
We don't have anything that disenfranchises reporting.
Good.
We encourage it. We have, claims management companies that will talk you through it and everything and whatnot. And, if we need to land a helicopter to get you somewhere, we will.
That's of course.
But I disagree in the fact that I think 0 is a possibility. Because if you don't have the mindset that you can hit 0, you don't need the job.
Fair.
Because I got 1,700 people that I take very seriously, them going home the same way every day. And if I gave up on that thought, and now I'm making excuses for the one injury.
You know what? And I have never had anybody push back, because I make that statement a fair amount, and I appreciate that you push back on it.
Yeah.
Because, like in baseball, using a baseball analogy, the best that hitters in the world make contact 1 in 3. I mean, they are the greatest in history. 300 is a incredible statistic. Yep. We're not playing baseball. No, we are putting systems and processes and people in place, near miss recordables and near miss things. And you told me earlier specifically that you were talking about the driver recordings and tracking on your drivers. And I thought it was such an interesting conversation because you said that it paid for itself very, very rapid.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about your driver program.
So we've got forward and rear facing cameras.
Yeah.
We have a very intensive training program before you get the keys.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we do,
And is that internal or external? How do you guys
all internal.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's a program that our insurance carrier kind of rolled out and perfected over the years. So they spent, a lot of money doing research. Yeah. We adopted their program, then made some minor tweaks and customized.
Now, who is that carrier?
It's Liberty.
It's Liberty. Wonderful. Great group.
Yep.
Great group.
And so we took their program. Liberty came in. We all got trained on it. And then we took it back to Ervin, and we sat down and we digested it, we processed it, and we said, okay, for our guys and the type of truck and the type of area and environments that we're in, we need to add this.
Right.
The biggest thing is removing the assumption that everybody can drive, because for us, the guy might show up driving a Honda Civic for his interview. That doesn't mean he needs the keys to an F-250 the next day.
Yes.
Or a bucket truck.
Yes.
So having a training program or a ramp up or escalation program that gets you to that bucket truck.
Yes.
With evals and points evaluations and stuff like that, it's paramount.
Very interesting. So you actually run your drivers through essentially driver's training.
Yes, 100%. So we call it a commentary drive, the biggest piece. So they do, we have, 5 interactive learnings.
Sure.
That they do.
Yep.
Removing assumptions of what people know. They've got to pass the practical exams on those.
Yes.
And then at the end of that, we teach them how to inspect the truck, perform a gate check and a DVR.
Right.
And then at the last phase of that is, we have, in our company, I think we have 35, maybe 40 authorized instructors for commentary drive. We put them in the truck, and they've got to go, and they got to talk about not making exposed left-hand turns, signaling, and just like you do when you got your permit, or your license.
Wow.
But it's more not how are you driving, it's indicating the hazards and identifying the hazards 400 feet up, 200 feet up.
I don't know any other organization that actually does that, which probably is a leading indicator to why your safety program has been so successful.
So we're very big on leading indicators.
I love that.
So we have, I had a really gifted data analyst. When I hired in, he was already on the team.
Yes.
And we sat down and I said, I want you to look at the last 4 years. And I want you to look at it this way.
Yep.
And then I want you to take those glasses off and put this lens on. And then I want us to sit down and we got to define the problem.
Yes.
And then while he was doing that, I was out in the field doing, crew level interviews, project interviews, and just listening. We come back and we wrote a custom algorithm that factors in all your human performance stuff,
Right.
factors in overdue trainings. I mean, it literally, there's not a lot that you touch at Ervin Cable that it's not factored in. What crew you're on, how many feet are you laying, how many gate checks have you done, when was the last JSO or JTSA done, and it's a pointing tool.
Sure.
It's not a disciplinary tool, but of course it's right more times than it's not.
It's interesting because I've had this conversation. I mentioned that my former business partner was his family was a multi-generational trucking family. And they were, and they've owned the company. It's a private organization and it was very successful. Hundreds of millions, billions of dollars and a very successful organization. But being private allows you the luxury, if your leadership, which obviously the family and your leadership has that mindset of invest in this process, invest in this, and a public company or some of these larger organizations or very small organizations couldn't do these types of things. And so I find it to be wonderful that you have a company of the size that you have that has the leadership that's investing in, because this is really a big investment. This is an investment in the safety and well-being of the employee all the way through. And I have to say that I truly don't think that I've heard of another organization of your scale. And maybe it's the fact that it's a family business. Maybe it's the fact that you started in Kentucky and your values have expanded, but you stayed true to Kentucky values. Whatever that happens to be, it's an amazing organization. I don't think many people would recognize it.
Ervin Cable it's been an amazing move for me and my family. I love going to work. I love people I work with. Like, it's just been amazing.
It's awesome. Some point, I would love to actually meet some of your leadership, because they just sound like they must be super special humans, because there is no way that they couldn't have been.
A lot of people know them from their wrestling pedigree. I mean, they're world-renowned wrestling coaches and runs. Probably it is the top wrestling program in the state of Kentucky.
Yes.
They've got more championships at that school than any other school. Right. They're a super small school in the middle of nowhere.
Okay.
But that family's invested in the wrestling community just like they've invested in the people of Ervin Cable and employees.
Yes.
And both of them are successes.
That's fantastic. So we don't have all day, so I want to make sure that we put a bow on this and we talk about, so you and I are kind of working through some of you're always looking, which I commend and I love, gaps in the program. You don't sit on your laurels. You're always looking for where can we be better? Where are things in the industry? And you brought up to me the importance and frankly, the lack of access to flaggers and spotters because when you're working for those who aren't familiar, when you're working on public roads specifically, the ability to flag and spot and make sure that their general community is safe and that your employees are safe, there's a training for that. And it's a very vital training that people and I can't tell you how many times I've seen road closures that were done poorly, or flaggers that obviously weren't trained. I mean, and being in the industry, I see that. So that's something you've identified. So what are you seeing out there in that realm of flagging and spotting?
There's some companies that you can hire to perform it on your behalf. Depending on where you're at, you may get good stuff or you may not. We predominantly do a lot in-house.
Sure.
We invest in our guys, we train our guys, and right now, in my opinion, across America, it's an enigma.
So tell me about what you've seen on the flagger and spotter side of the business in constructions, and specifically because you deal nationwide. Every state, from my understanding, has a different policy, procedure, requirement, law. So what are you seeing out there?
Obviously, the federal documents, the MUTCD,
right?
And then every state, adopts probably 85% of it, but then they add their own 15% spin to it.
Sure.
Some of them require additional training. Utah is specific about that for sure.
Right.
And it's just And like you, I drive past a job site. It could be a state ran job site,
Sure.
and it's not set up to the reg.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
And I don't know what the answer is. I know what Ervin's doing to make it right.
Well, we thank you for that, because I think we're part of that solution, not the entirety of it. But, the decentralization that we at Yellowbird are focused on is people who are actually capable and competent and trained on how to do this kind of stuff in state that are localized is so vitally important. You said to me earlier that your team is within 1 to 2 hours of any of their locations, and so you've invested in the humans to be the oversight folks, but they still have to operate on an ongoing basis with a oversight, and it's difficult. It's whack-a-mole of compliance, it's whack-a-mole of best practices and our own standards. And so it's an interesting thing, because I don't believe that anybody, and I know that we all agree with this, nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I'm going to do things to hurt my employees, or I'm going to do things that are the wrong way. No, but the focus on time and budget in this industry of construction, but frankly, all industries, I believe is the number one driver behind all of this stuff. And so, yes, you need to be properly flagger trained. You need spotters. You need to make sure that people who are doing surveys and identifying challenges with your programs or with your operation or with an individual have a training follow-up, have an action. Goes back to your 3 E's, right? So you need to empower them to do that. So from a forward-looking statement, when you look at how you're going to operate as you expand and grow, what are the things that you can duplicate, and what are the things that have to be custom?
We have a per office model.
Okay.
We know how to staff it at this point.
Sure.
We know how many people are we hiring in.
Yes.
What's the assignment? What the project look like? And then, from a corporate perspective, I'm not going to say we figured it out, but we're always getting better.
Sure.
And when you open offices as frequently as we do, or move offices as frequently as we do, we've gotten more efficient.
Right.
And we're not, it used to be measured in, from the time you wanted it to the time that you were operating in it. That was the measure of efficiency.
Sure.
Well, now it's, when are we doing our pre-safety walks, or when's the landlord putting the emergency exits up? What is our smoke detection? Let's put that in the lease. And we're so on the advanced side that we're getting better. I'm not sure we'll ever be across the finish line, because it keeps moving.
So earlier today we were together, we were off site, and we were doing some stuff, and you said, hey, I've got to get back to where we're going to record the podcast, Jake's. And thank you, Jake's Cigar Bar, for hosting us. You had to review a contract. And I think the philosophy of the head of safety reviewing a contract for the safety provisions to make sure that they meet your standard. I don't know a lot of organizations that do that.
I've always done it.
Yes.
And a lot of times it takes, if you're the new guy, you're the new director, the new VP, like you've got to work your way into getting that level of trust to be able to see it. Now, there's certain contracts I don't see the numbers, which is fine.
You don't judge
dollars
don't matter. I mean,
for what their job to bring the money in the front door, my job's to help keep it in the house.
Yeah, keep it in house and make sure everybody goes home safe.
That's it.
And but I have to acknowledge and tell you that your organization and you particularly are doing things that are very unique, and it's a special place and what you're doing. So, as a wrap up, from a live podcast perspective, which I have never done. I set this all up myself. I am a CEO who does not know how to do broadcasting. So hopefully this all comes together just fine. I don't know if it will, but I'm going to ask you, as we sit here in a beautiful environment and have a lovely drink and cigar, if you look at what you'd like to see from the safety culture universally, not just within your organization, the things that you feel are vitally important that we as a community and we as a industry of safety, not just industry of construction, focus on, what do you feel that we need to really highlight and focus on as a commuter?
Training. 100%. You can't, coming from the military, you just can't, you can't overtrain.
Yeah.
Now you can undertrain.
Yep.
You can train the wrong way.
Right.
But if you train the right way, it's more efficient. The check on learning or affirmation that they comprehended it is always better.
Yes. That comprehension piece. I had a lady, I'll be releasing a podcast soon about language barriers and literacy, and how, unfortunately, in construction in particular, and I don't believe you, from what I can tell, you don't have as high of a turnover rate at your organization that many do. But of course, there's 1,700 people. You have to.
It's not where we want it to be,
Of course.
but
Of course. But investing in people's training and also investing in safety at high turnover environments is challenging. And
it's an investment. It doesn't matter if they've been there a day or a year. You got to invest the same amount of money in them to keep them safe.
yes, and you're committed to do so.
Absolutely.
That is that's wonderful. And do you believe that online is a direction that is sufficient, or do you think that in person at the end of the day is going to be, and we're looking at people having the ability to implement.
I like the online stuff. I really like it, like in certain aspects where there's language barriers.
Yes.
It's very beneficial, very effective. But I still look at anything, if it's something you're going to do hands-on later,
Right.
online should be the familiarization piece. There should be a check on learning in the field.
Yeah.
We're in a controlled environment, using the hands that are going to do the job.
I love that.
You cannot watch a video on YouTube and be a good forklift operator.
It's so interesting that you should say that, because I had no idea what your answer was going to be. And that's actually part of what I try to do, is not lead the witness. That I'm not against online training, and I'm not against any version of training, but I believe at the end of the day that you need to do a test and answer questions and go through in person. Because if you sit on that vehicle and you go forward and you realize that you have 3,000 pounds on a forklift or more that are turning a corner, and if somebody is underneath it, they're going to have a very bad day.
Absolutely.
And so is their family, and it's a bad thing. And so, well, I thank you so much for doing this. I know that I took a longer time out of your day than we anticipated, but I've never done this in person. I enjoyed sipping on some bourbon and enjoying the conversation.
If you're Kentucky, you got to have bourbon.
Absolutely. In fact, I said that I enjoy my whiskeys and bourbon. You come to see us, you're going to have your bourbon. And I'm like, fair enough. Yep. So thank you again. And we'll be seeing you out there.
All right. Sounds good, buddy. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it for today's episode of the Canary Report. If this conversation helped you reframe how you think about risk and safety, please do me a favor. Hit subscribe, leave a review, and share it with somebody who needs to hear it. We're building a new category of safety and risk leadership, one that's faster and smarter. Leaders who aren't just empowered by tech, but whose wisdom is accelerated by it. To learn more about how Yellowbird's cutting-edge platform is empowering leaders to solve workplace safety and risk challenges faster, smarter, and at scale, visit goyellowbird.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Yellowbird pages to stay up to date. Until next time, lead with clarity, know first, and act fast.